going to court in an effort to protect the operation of children on school buses according to language. So he's being challenged in the court. This forced separation has led to some rural routes being run by full-size buses travelling as much as 30 kilometres each way, carrying 2 to 3 students. So there's a French bus that goes out, there's an English bus that goes out. Now this is interesting. So obviously the French bus has to be driven by a person speaking French, and obviously the English applicably. So where no language appropriate drivers can be found locally, and that's one of a few examples, one was hired to travel from Moncton to Fredericton, housed in a hotel all week long, and returns home of the weekend because they don't have a French driver to drive the bus. Kept in a motel for the week. And that's continual. That didn't happen for a week. Yes.
Well, those Canadians that are sympathetic to that type of cause should wake up and realize how much we are hated in certain parts of this country, particularly the federal government, and that applies to now.
Yes, sadly, and you're going to get what you've been given on steroids, I can tell you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
2 buses, 2 drivers, 2 sets of languages, 2 maintenance, repair bills, 2 tanks of fuel, to travel essentially the same route with less than half the capacity. So the cost is huge. Obviously, based on population, there are areas where having 2 buses makes sense. However, there are a number of areas where it does not. Definitely does not. Separate daycare as well occurs in New Brunswick. Another matter being concerned in language-specific daycares to be managed under the education system. Not only does this further separate our communities and lead to setting a poor example of integration, tolerance, acceptance and cooperation. There are current supplements available to assist with the cost of childcare. If a daycare fails under education, which is already paid for, does this mean that we'll lose childcare subsidies? So in other words, the Language Commissioner can walk into a daycare facility, and she did this to a very unfortunate gentleman, a commissionaire in a government building. She will speak only in French. The gentleman greeted her, "Good morning, bonjour." She spoke to him in French. He said, "I'm sorry, madam, I will go and get somebody who is bilingual." And she instantly switched to English and said, "So sad, too bad."
Yeah, and that's why I add something at this point also. I don't hear any English people saying, "I'm sorry, I don't speak French." Don't be sorry, be proud of being English.
Yeah. So this is the Language Commissioner. She then went upstairs, did what she had to do in that building, came out, and she signed the entry and departure register, walked back to her office and made out a complaint which ended up in that gentleman ultimately being fired. Yeah. And there is a 10-minute difference between when she signed out on the register and when the complaint was registered. So she was the complainant. But the gentleman has no right to know who made the complaint. So the public outcry was so great that the gentleman was reinstated, but not in that building, He was put out in the sun in summer. This is a gentleman 4 months from retirement. Was put out in the car park with no shade whatsoever, and he sustained it, he stuck with it, so they reduced his hours from 36 hours to 18. Yes?
Just a point of clarification, you say he was a commissioner.
Yes, correct.
Commissioners are federally mandated.
Yeah, my understanding, he was a retired police officer acting as a commissioner in a public building.
The court commissioners are protected under a federal statute.
Yeah, well, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, but thank you for that. Can we talk afterwards,
Yep.
please? Yeah. So then coming back to this, since school hours are very different from daycare, how do we manage childcare outside of the school? And I just go back to what I started to say. If the commissioner walks into a daycare and introduces herself in French, and there is nobody there who can respond in French back to her, then that's the danger that they're talking about. That means that particular daycare school will lose their subsidies. That's the power this lady has. So that's just an overview of the Language Act. So in 2013, Bill 22 amended the Language Act. Now we're talking about the New Brunswick Act. Again, in response to recommendations from a select committee, included francophone organisers but no anglophones. So that's the recommendation. It was recommendation purely from the francophones, held behind closed doors and deemed too emotional or too controversial for the public. So the public were locked out of that. That government meets yearly as well as needed, again with the francophone interest. No anglophone interest received the same courtesy. Now the next revision is not until December the 3rd, 2021. So that, and there is no chance of any English person getting any recommendations to change the Language Act in New Brunswick. So what was the Language Act brought in to do? Right, it was introduced in 1988. The language of work policy has also evolved, intended to broaden the scope and opportunities for employees within departments and agencies of the New Brunswick Public Service to work in their language of choice. That's what it was brought in for. It was never intended to be used as a means of selecting employees. So again, it's personnel and payroll services, yearly performances appraisals, and needed work instruments available in employees' preferred official language. Staff can communicate with head office, and the time departments can communicate with central agencies in their daily work meetings and discussions, or when drafting documents. So that's all it was. That's what it was set out to do, to make it so that it was easy for whether you're English or French to be able to carry out your duties in a public facility, not private. So, cities and municipalities with a minority language population of 20% are required to ensure communication of all public information, this is websites, documents, minutes of meeting, are in both official language regardless of use. And we had a lady from Moncton, and this lady is French, yeah, a really nice lady. That is her job. She translates everything into French, has it available for a French person who wishes to read it, and unfortunately I forget the number of years that she has been doing that and has not had one single request for the French version. So all of that time, all of that cost to translate all of the English documents over into French, and nobody has even accessed it. Communities often have to hire or attract employees from outside their community to meet the mandate, as to hiring locally. If you go up to Fredericton, and there is another small city up above that, and I forget the name of it. If you go into, that's it. If you go into the hospital car park in there, the actual registration plates on the cars are 3 from Quebec to every one English one.
Yeah, well, same as here in Ontario, especially in Montfort Hospital.
Yeah. The Commissioner of Official Languages has suggested that all senior positions should be mandated bilingual, and that is no longer acceptable in the province of New Brunswick that senior positions can be filled by an individual who is unilingual, meaning English only. Now this is a real worry. Now I understand here in Ontario there is an interpretation facility, and I forget the numbers. I think it's something like, there is a translation for something like 140 languages that is accepted by your ambulance facilities. So no matter what person is speaking, they have an automatic translation. That is my understanding. The Commissioner herself in New Brunswick, along with the Minister for Health, have decreed that that is not acceptable in New Brunswick. So that now causes every ambulance that is called out in New Brunswick to have 2 people in the ambulance. One who speaks English, one who speaks French. And the problem is, if there is not a French-speaking person available to go on the ambulance, they cannot respond to a call. That's true. Yeah. So the question has to be asked, is this a reasonable or even justifiable use of our tax dollars? And obviously the answer there is no, it isn't. This is just some hard truth. New Brunswick is Canada's fastest shrinking province. That is both population and also in gross domestic product. The population dropped by 941. Now, say that's 1,000 people. If Ontario was to lose 1,000 people, what's the population of Ontario? No, it can't be. There's 6 million in Toronto. Yeah. I think it's about 12 million. So if 1,000 people relocated from Ontario in a year, yeah, no great worry. The entire population of New Brunswick is less than 750,000. So you lose 1,000 people who move out because of bilingualism, and that is quite a substantial loss. The population started declining 3 years ago. And the question is that a coincidence? No, it isn't. In the past, the population has decreased by 3,500, the equivalent of the entire town of Dalhousie. That's one of the smaller towns in New Brunswick. Double the decline of Canada's two other shrinking provinces. So the losses in New Brunswick are twice that of the other areas. It's the 17th straight quarter of population decline, and New Brunswick economy has produced no growth in the past 6 years.
No growth.
That's actually just picked off the website. That's the actual document that I've been speaking to. I'll just run through afterwards, and I'll just put up the details for anyone who wants to contact. New Brunswick needs your support. They really do. As hard as you are doing it here in Ontario, their situation is absolutely dire. And I know somebody just picking up the phone and ringing this group and saying, hey,